Uncle Gold Clips.
Oh, well, Starlink. Starlink springs to mind immediately. This is the majority of the launches that SpaceX have been doing over the last year and a half now have actually not been for paying customers. They have been for themselves. And they're launching satellites called Starlink. And this is going to be, it is a constellation. It's active now of, I've actually lost count. I think it's close to 1,000 satellites at this point. But the complete constellation will be somewhere between 12 and 42,000 satellites. That's pretty insane because prior to Starlink, the number of active satellites in orbit of Earth was 4,000. So they've already increased the number of active satellites by 25% now. And they aim to just basically eclipse the count, at least, of satellites.
All right.
And what they do is... It's the internet in space. It's taking the traffic of the internet, which ordinarily, we're communicating over the internet right now. Whoever's listening to this is listening over the internet. That traffic is routed along big, thick cables that run between the continents, but they don't run directly across the ocean. They generally hug the outline of the continental shelf. And so it's a somewhat circuitous route. But if you put a network, a web of satellites orbiting the planet that have laser links between them and then link down to the ground, you can send that signal on a much more direct route. When people hear satellite internet, if they know anything about it, they may think, oh, but that's very low bandwidth, very long latencies. And the reason for that historically has been that these satellites are generally put at either geosynchronous or half geosynchronous orbit. These are orbits where it takes as long to circle, to fall around the planet as it does for the planet to turn, or half geosynchronous takes, half as long. And to get that kind of resonance, you need to travel out quite a long distance. Half geosynchronous, I think, is like 12,000 kilometers. Geosynchronous is 36,000 kilometers. And the speed of light becomes a big issue then. Light will travel 300,000 kilometers in 1 second. 36,000 kilometers is about a tenth of a second. So you're already at 100 milliseconds ping time there. And then that's one leg of the journey. Coming back, that's another 200 milliseconds. If you have processing on the satellite, that's another 10 or 15 milliseconds. If you have ground stations that need to route that through landlines to you or landlines to the packets that it's getting from the web, it's another few hundred milliseconds. So you're looking at probably 300 milliseconds ping time on a satellite connection on a good day. Your upload speeds are tiny from those geosynchronous
you probably have a bad router and an old computer, and the whole interface kind of gets slower because of it.
Yeah. So how do you solve that? Well, you put them closer to the Earth. You'll need a lot more of them because the ground coverage of a satellite close to the Earth is much less than one that's further away because the horizon is much closer. So Starlink, that's why there's so many Starlink satellites, thousands of them going into orbit. But being within, I think the operational height is 550 kilometers. So that is, I can't even work that out. That's like a single-digit milliseconds for a light speed travel time up to the satellite and back down. And then you have light speed travel through laser links between the satellites, which is inherently faster than sending an optical signal through fiber optic pathways, let alone the fact that those fiber optic pathways are going on a circuitous route around the continent.
So the satellites will kind of look at each other in space and convey information that way faster.
That's right, with pulses of laser light. And so they are forming a web of laser beams. Now, these aren't, laser beams that are going to slice up spacecraft or anything. And I need to emphasize that even with tens of thousands of satellites in orbit, space is big. Douglas Adams famously said at the beginning of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you may think it's a long way down the street to the pharmacy, but that's just peanuts to space. Space is unbelievably big.
Massive, yeah.
There is a lot of space in space. And so if you know where all these satellites are going to be, you can avoid them fairly easily. And it's well published where they are. So there isn't really a concern about that. The other concern that people will have is that it's going to clog up space with debris. But they intentionally put them in this low orbit for not only the latency reason, but also because there's atmospheric drag there that will take down malfunctioning satellites in a matter of months. And they'll burn up in the atmosphere. So you've got this web covering the world, providing much faster connection speed between any given locations on the planet, and very fast upload and download speeds because the signal is strong at that distance from the Earth. There are people who have already already signed up to it. It's working now. You can look up Starlink demo or Starlink test on YouTube, and you'll find people doing speed tests and testing it out in snowy conditions and so on.
Yeah.
It is using a wavelength that won't go through your roof and has trouble in snowy conditions, for example. But by trouble, I mean you're dropping from 150 megabits per second down to 25 megabits per second. It's still extremely usable.
Yeah.
So that, I think, was the biggest thing I left out of it.
How effective? How fast would it be in like optimum conditions? Do we have like the ideal version of it?
At the moment, optimum conditions is, I think, between 100 and 150 megabits per second. Depends how many satellites are in the sky at any given moment. But that is going to continuously improve because these are satellites that are designed to age out after maybe 5 years and ditch themselves into the atmosphere. SpaceX is going to be continually launching new ones. They launch 60 at a time with Falcon 9. They're stacked up like trestle tables in a truck on the Falcon 9, and it's actually beautiful to watch them deploy. And it's such a simple way of doing it. They strap them to the rocket in a big stack of 60 satellites, and when it gets to orbit, they just spin the rocket a bit and blow the strap.
And they fly out.
Yeah, like somebody throwing a deck of cards. They just all separate out.
Hey, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see the full version, go to the Uncle Gold Podcast YouTube channel or watch the next clip.